Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time we're going to be looking at the history of GIS.
Geographic Information Systems?
GIS.
It's
And basically we're trying to trace it from its very, very beginnings.
it's a pretty fascinating story when you think about it.
Yeah.
Just this idea that we can represent the world around us in a way that makes sense
Yeah.
and helps us to, find our way around and understand our place in it.
Well, and I think, the technology for this is pretty advanced now, but when we think back,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Oh,
how
yeah.
how long have people been making maps?
Well, that's the thing. It goes back way further than you might think.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got some sources here talking about prehistoric cave paintings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like the Mapa de Abans in Spain from like 11,650 BC. It's incredible.
That's like older than the pyramid.
It's considered the oldest map in Western Europe, and it shows, animals and rivers and even like hunting routes.
So it's like they were already thinking about space and place and how to get around.
Absolutely. And it's not just Europe either.
Oh, really?
You've got the Sarılhoyuk mural in Turkey, which is thought to be a map of a volcanic eruption and the surrounding settlement.
That's so cool. It's like their way of like recording history and passing on knowledge.
Exactly. And it just shows this innate human need to represent our environment visually.
So are you saying like GIS, it's not just a modern thing, it's like built into us somehow?
I think there's something to that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, this need to understand where we are and how things are connected, it's been there from the beginning.
And this wasn't just limited to cave paintings and murals, right?
Mhm.
Weren't there some ancient civilizations that were getting pretty sophisticated with their maps?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the ancient Greeks really took things to a whole new level.
Oh yeah, the Greeks,
They found
they're
out.
famous for.
All about logic and reason and observation.
Yeah.
And they applied that to map making as well.
So like what kind of things were they doing?
Well, you've got guys like Anaximander and Hecateo creating the ecumeny, the first model of the known world way back in 580 BC.
It's like trying to map the entire world with like no Google Earth.
Exactly. And then you have Aristotle developing methods for measuring latitude.
Oh yeah, latitude and longitude. Those are like the building blocks of maps, right?
Right. And Hipparchus, who made huge contributions to map projections.
Oh yeah.
These were all essential steps in the evolution of cartography.
And then there's Eratosthenes,
Yeah, Eratosthenes was a genius.
the guy who figured out the circumference of the Earth.
That's right. Not only did he calculate the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy, he also developed the concept of latitude and longitude.
Latitude and longitude. I always kind of struggled with those in school. Can you explain that a little bit more for me?
Sure. So imagine you're drawing a grid on the Earth.
Hi.
Latitude lines run east-west, like parallel to the equator,
Well,
telling you how far north or south you are from the equator.
okay, I see.
Longitude lines run north-south from pole to pole, telling you how far east or west you are from a reference point, which is now the prime meridian in Greenwich, England.
So it's like every location on Earth has its own unique address.
Exactly, like a global coordinate system.
Wow, and that all goes back to those ancient Greeks.
Yeah, pretty amazing, huh?
That's mind-blowing, and I feel like we can't talk about ancient Greek cartography without mentioning Ptolemy.
Ah, Ptolemy, the rock star of ancient mapmaking.
Right.
His work was so influential, his book Geographia was like the go-to guide for mapmakers for centuries.
So he was like compiling all the existing knowledge and kind of standardizing things.
Yeah, he didn't just collect information, he developed new map projections and refined methods for determining positions using coordinates.
So his maps were pretty accurate then.
Well, not entirely accurate by today's standards, but they were pretty good for the time.
Yeah.
And they provided a framework for understanding the world that was used by explorers for generations.
It's incredible to think how far mapping came from those early cave paintings to these sophisticated maps by Ptolemy.
It's a testament to human curiosity and our drive to understand the world around us.
Yeah, and that drive just kept pushing us forward even after the ancient Greeks.
Oh yeah, the story's just getting started.
Right, because next we're going to head into the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and see how map making evolved even further.
Things are about to get even more interesting.
Yeah, stay tuned. Okay, so we're moving on from the ancient Greeks into the Middle Ages and the Renaissance.
Yeah, it's a really interesting period for cartography.
Yeah, because, when I think about those times, I always picture those old maps with like sea monsters and stuff.
Right, those decorative elements.
Like, were those just for looks or were those?
Yeah, well, they were partly artistic flourishes,
Yeah.
but they often had a deeper meaning too.
Okay.
Take portolan charts, for example.
Portolan charts.
These were nautical maps used by sailors in the 13th and 14th centuries, and they focused mainly on coastlines and navigational routes.
So they were all about practicality,
Yeah.
like getting from point A to point B safely?
Exactly. They were crucial for navigating the Mediterranean and the Atlantic.
So it was like their GPS system.
You could say that, yeah.
And during this time, we also see the rise of some pretty important figures, like Al-Idrisi.
Oh, yeah. Al-Idrisi was fascinating.
Yeah.
He created this incredibly detailed map of the known world called the Tabula Reguriana.
Okay.
And what's really cool is that he was a big advocate for the idea of a spherical Earth.
So he was like ahead of his time?
Yeah, a lot of people still believed in a flat Earth back then.
That's wild.
This was also a time of great exploration and discovery with the development of the compass, which completely revolutionized navigation.
Right.
And then you have the creation of TO maps.
TO maps.
Yeah, they depicted the world as a circle divided by the Mediterranean Sea, reflecting the worldview of the time.
Okay, I'm not familiar with those.
They're pretty interesting.
So we're seeing progress in map making, but is there a particular breakthrough that really stands out during this period?
Well, one of the biggest was the Mercator projection.
Oh yeah, the Mercator projection. That's the one that makes Greenland look huge, right?
Exactly. It was created by Gerardus Mercator in 1569, and it's still widely used today, especially for navigation.
But it distorts the size of things, so why is it still so popular?
Well, Mercator's goal was to create a map that preserved direction. So a straight line drawn on the map would correspond to a constant compass bearing in the real world.
So it was perfect for sailors.
Yeah, they could plot their courses accurately.
Makes sense, but it still makes Greenland look way bigger than it actually is.
True, but every map projection involves trade-offs.
Yeah.
It's all about choosing the best representation for a particular purpose.
So are we saying that all maps are kind of subjective?
In a way, yes. Every map is an interpretation of the world.
And speaking of representing the world, this is also when we see the emergence of the first modern atlas.
Right, the
A collection of maps all bound together.
Exactly. Abraham Ortelius published the Theatrum Orbis Terrarum in 1570.
Okay.
It's considered the first modern atlas.
So it was like a game changer for geographic knowledge.
It made maps more accessible and organized.
Right.
It's a big step forward.
So we're seeing maps become more accurate, more detailed, more widely available.
And they're starting to be used for more than just navigation and exploration.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, for example, they were being used for military planning,
Okay.
land surveying, and even for understanding the spread of diseases.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me of John Snow and his work on the cholera outbreak in London.
John Snow, a classic example of spatial analysis in action.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Can we dive into that a little bit more?
Sure. Let's go back to 1854. London is in the grip of a deadly cholera outbreak.
That's scary.
John Snow, this physician, he's determined to find the source of the contamination.
Okay.
And he uses maps to do it.
So he's like a medical detective.
Exactly. He meticulously maps the locations of cholera cases, and then he overlays that map with the locations of water pumps.
What did he find?
A clear pattern. The outbreak was clustered around a specific pump on Broad Street.
So the map revealed the culprit.
It did. By visualizing the data spatially, Snow identified the contaminated water source.
Wow.
And he was able to convince authorities to remove the pump handle, which effectively stopped the outbreak.
So he saved lives with a map.
He did. It's a classic example of how maps can be used to understand and solve public health crises.
That's pretty amazing.
It really is. And it's a great example of how spatial analysis works.
Yeah, and I'm guessing this is where GIS really starts to take shape.
It's a pivotal moment that foreshadows the development of modern GIS.
Okay, but how do we get from John Snow's hand-drawn maps to the computer-based systems we use today?
Well, that's where the 20th century comes in.
Right, because that's when computers really started to take off.
Exactly, and that had a huge impact on GIS.
Okay, so we've gone from cave paintings to cholera outbreaks, all using maps to understand the world around us.
And the story of GIS is about to take a giant leap forward.
Yeah, because the 20th century brought us computers.
Exactly. Computers revolutionized everything, including how we collect, analyze, and visualize geographic data.
So is it just about computers getting faster and more powerful?
Well, that was a big part of it, but there were other factors too, like the space race.
Oh yeah, the space race.
Think about the launch of Sputnik in 1957, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth.
It was like a whole new perspective on our planet.
Literally. And it led to an explosion of geographic data from satellites.
So we had all this data, but we needed a way to make sense of it.
Exactly. And that's where Roger Tomlinson comes in.
Roger Tomlinson, the father of GIS.
The one and only.
Yeah.
In 1960, he created the Canada Geographic Information System, or CGIS.
CGIS, that was the first true GIS.
The very first. It was initially used for land inventory and management in Canada.
So they could analyze things like soil types, forests, and land use.
Exactly. It helped them make more informed decisions about resource management.
It sounds like the perfect tool for a country with so much land.
It was a game changer. And it paved the way for the development of GIS software for all sorts of applications.
So CGIS was happening in Canada, and around the same time, Howard Fisher was doing similar work at Harvard.
That's right. He was establishing the Harvard Laboratory for Computer Graphics and Spatial Analysis.
So GIS was really starting to take off in both the academic and government worlds.
It was a hotbed of innovation.
But what about the software itself? What were those early programs like?
Well, they were pretty basic compared to what we have today, but still groundbreaking for their time.
Yeah.
Programs like CMAP allowed users to create thematic maps and analyze spatial data in ways that were never before possible.
It must have been so exciting for researchers and planners to have those tools.
It was a whole new world. And as computers advanced, so did GIS software.
So things are moving pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. And then CAD technology came along, computer-aided design.
Oh, yeah.
Which allowed for more sophisticated map creation and editing.
So GIS was getting more powerful and more user-friendly.
Exactly. And that's when we start to see the rise of commercial GIS software companies.
Like ESRI.
Right. Companies like ESRI made GIS software more affordable and accessible to a wider range of users.
So it was no longer just for universities and government agencies.
Exactly. It started to spread to businesses, nonprofits, and even individuals.
And I think for a lot of people, their first real experience with GIS might have been something they use every day without even realizing it's GIS.
You're talking about Google Maps.
Google Maps. It's like having a virtual map in your pocket.
It's amazing how seamlessly GIS has become integrated into our lives.
Finding directions, exploring new places, even checking out restaurant reviews, it's all powered by GIS.
And Google Maps is just one example. GIS is being used in countless ways.
Urban planning, archaeology, disaster relief, even agriculture. It's everywhere.
It's truly become an essential tool for understanding and managing our world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think it's important to step back and think about what we've learned.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
From cave paintings to sophisticated computer systems, the desire to understand our place in the world has driven the development of GIS for millennia.
It's a testament to human ingenuity and our endless curiosity.
And it makes you wonder what the future holds for GIS.
As technology continues to evolve, GIS will undoubtedly become even more powerful and integrated into our lives.
What new possibilities will emerge? What challenges will we face?
It's an exciting time to be involved in this field.
It really is. So for our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring, to learn more about GIS, and to think about how this technology is shaping our world.
Because understanding GIS is essential for understanding our present and our future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the history of GIS.